All right, guys, I've got a quick one for you here. This is basics of for loops. So let's make ourselves a for loop. You've probably seen a for loop already as the like sample code, or you've seen me use it in class. Like it's going to be hard to have gotten to even the second or third day in Java without using one. So let's go over just a little bit of vocab for them. All right. So a for loop starts with a for, and then there's a set of parentheses and a set of brackets. In the parentheses, you need to put three things. Those things are an initialize, a condition, and an update. So first thing is I need to initialize a variable to use as my loop counter. So I'm going to call that an integer I, and I'm going to start my integer I at 0. You certainly don't have to start it at 0. You can start it at something else if you want. A lot of the time we start them at 0. Then I need a condition. So, sorry, I got an initializer, a condition, and then we'll have an update. So this is my initializer. I'm initializing a variable here. Really, I'm declaring an initializing variable. Well, whatever. Then we're going to have our condition, which is under what condition should we continue to do the loop. So I'm going to say that I want to continue to do the loop so long as I is less than 10. And then lastly, we need an update. So our update is usually something like I++. That means we're going through the loop one I at a time, right? So we're going to start the loop, I is going to be 0. Then we're going to go through the loop again, I is going to be 1. Then we're going to go through the loop again, I is going to be 2. We're going to keep doing that. And we're going to stop at, we're going to do the loop when we get to 9. And then when we get to 10, we're not going to do anything because we've passed our condition, right? Because at that point, I will no longer be less than 10. It'll be equal to 10. We'd stop there. You can use greater equals here. You can use equal signs in there if you want. If you want it to run when I is 10. You can update by something not 1. So if you wanted to update by 2 or something, you can do I plus equals 2 here. Or you can do I plus equals 3. So that'd go by threes forward. So we do 0, 3, 6, 9. We wouldn't do 12 because it's past 10. Hoping that makes sense. You can certainly go backwards if you want to make this a decrease and make this a I is bigger than something. That's perfectly valid. These are kind of the basic loops. There's a thing called an enhanced for loop that acts a little differently that we'll talk about later. So, like, maybe later topics here. So, later on, we'll talk about enhanced for loops. These actually make more sense to students generally. They're not usually harder, but we don't have arrays yet. So when we get to arrays, we'll talk about enhanced for loops, or array lists. We'll talk about enhanced for loops. And then there's other kinds of loops. So there's while loops, do while loops. There's some other options. Most of the time, you're going to get away with for loops and while loops. That should be plenty. Enhanced for loops are hella handy, but that's what we're going to talk about later. For right now, I just want to showcase this. So let's get this printing out a little bit. So let's do a system out printf, and we'll do the loop counter is, and we'll need a D because we're doing an integer, and the loop counter I want to print out is I, and we'll put a semicolon there. And now I should see some loop counters. So here, after we run this, we'll get the loop counter is 0, the loop counter is 3, 6, 9. Great. Looks like I needed a new line in there, so let's get that in there just for aesthetics sake. All right, great. Loop went through by threes. That's working. What if we went through by, say, I don't know, eights? How many times do we expect this to run? It should run twice. Once for 0, once for 8. We could go down. So if we did minus equals 2, let's see what happens here. You'll notice this is not stopping. This is going still. Why is this going still? This is because I've put myself into an infinite loop, because I said that I wanted to stop when I was bigger than 10, right? So this condition is never not satisfied, right? I'm always less than 10 because I'm subtracting 2 every time. So here I've counted down by 2. I'm up to like, what is that, 4-ish million? Let's put a stop to this thing. All right, so we got to 4.5 million counting by 2s backwards. Cool. More common to not cause an infinite loop, so just be careful. You absolutely can cause the code to fall into an infinite loop. If you do that accidentally, it can really be a problem. There are cases where you'd want an infinite loop, but you probably shouldn't use a for loop for that. Like game states usually use a while loop. Cool. I think that's what I've got on for loop absolute basics. Let me write out just quick. These are the initialize, update, and increment. Sorry, initialize condition and increment. Sometimes increment is called update. All right. So if you're going to nest loops, the outside one is uses I as its indexer. The inside one uses J. So let's go and say we wanted to go through, and for each I, right, we want to go through. And then for each, like, let's say for each I, we want to do 2 tasks, right? So we'd put another for loop in here. On this one, we'd initialize J to 0. You can't use I because it's already used above, and that would make things messy. Let's do I is less than 2, so we only get through this middle loop twice. And let's do J++. So that's incrementing J's by 1. And I'm just going to copy this code, drop it here, and say the inner loop counter is, and then we'll put J there. So each time we do this, we should see a loop counter for I, and then we should see 2 loop counters for J, and then we should see another loop counter for I, and 2 more for J. So let's see what we get here. Ruh-roh. We've got a problem. Okay, so what's the problem? Let's stop this and see if we can figure out what the problem is. So we've got an inner loop counter is continually getting bigger. So the fact that this doesn't stop means that we probably have a problem with our condition. So let's go look at our conditions. Notice that I've got one here. I is less than 10 says is always true. This one, it says condition I is less than 2 is always true. Wait, why has this loop got an I in it? That's the inner loop. That should have a J in it. So this is where you have to be a little careful with these. If you use the inner loop counter in the condition, or sorry, the outer loop counter in the condition for the inner loop, you may well make yourself a case where you have an infinite loop again. It's real possible to create an infinite loop. Don't feel bad when it happens to you. It definitely is just a thing that happens sometimes. So let's run this and see what we get. Now I got, okay, loop counter, so that's I. So I is 0, inner loop counter is 0 and 1. Outer loop counter is 2, inner loops counter is 0 and 1. Outer loop counter is 4, inner loop counter is 0 and 1. Outer loop counter is 6, inner loop is 0 and 1. Outer loop is 8, inner loop is 0 and 1. Awesome. Great. What if we wanted to do 3 layers deep? Well, if we wanted to do 3 layers deep, this next one would be K. So this is initialize, condition, increment. This is what we call the outer loop. This is going to be a use I as this variable. Then for the inner loop, we're going to copy that same code because it's the same idea. And this is going to be the inner loop. And on this one, we would use not I, but j as the variable. If we did a third loop, would use k as a variable. All right, that's what I've got for you on for loop basics today. Thank you guys for watching. Much appreciated.